Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting to the Other Side. I am Dr. Eddie Capparucci. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so glad you're able to join us today. A pretty interesting topic, at least I think so, is can we be cured? Can we be cured of this disorder that we have? So let me start off with first by taking a step back and let me define sex addiction. Okay, basically, sex addiction refers to excessive sexual thoughts, urges, desires, behaviors that can't be controlled. That that's the thing you have to lean on. Cannot be controlled, and then lead to distress and harm to your relationships and in other areas of your life. Okay, so that's what a sex addiction is. So here's the question: does the day come when we are free of the stronghold that sex and porn has on? And I say the answer is yes and no. Okay? So I'm going to start off with no. And the reason I say no is because what we're dealing with is an addictive brain. People like me, I have an addictive brain. And therefore, what an addictive brain means is that we are prone to compulsive disorders or behaviors. We're just prone to it. It is something that I have to work very, very hard at to not give into. And while I may have done very well on the side of the, problematic sexual behavior, I still struggle when it comes to things like, you know what, I think I want that third or fourth donut. Okay. I mean, it's there. I know I shouldn't have it. No, it's not good for me, but that compulsiveness to do that. And it's the compulsiveness that gets us in trouble. It's what leads to relapse and also to poor decision making. Let me grab the third or the fourth donut. Um, Compulsiveness, when it comes to sexual addiction, lead to an increase in sexual thoughts and behaviors that are difficult to control. When I was at the height of my compulsive disorder, from a sexual aspect, starting at age 14 and running till I was in my late 30s. I mean, I will tell you that sexual thoughts were rampant in my life. And probably the only time they went away was if I sat down to watch maybe a sporting event, a baseball game, a basketball game, football, something like that. And then I would rather tuned out to it. And of course, there were some other times, if I was at a kid's birthday party, I'm not thinking sexual thoughts and things. But for the most part, they were rampant, and it was very difficult to manage them. And part of the reason was I didn't know how to manage them. And I didn't know they could be managed. I thought this was just my brain in action. So you almost wonder sometimes, as opposed to calling it a sex addiction, should we call it a compulsive sexual disorder or a compulsive sexual behavior? And some people do. Some clinicians refer to that, okay? Because what's happening is there is this continuous desire to want to, whether it's pornography, acting out in other ways, to achieve some sort of sexual gratification. But we can't eliminate the addiction aspect of it, because what happens is there is the ongoing activation of the reward center in our brain. And through that constant activation, that is where we see the addiction manifest itself. So therefore, we're producing abundance of dopamine, and we're getting this rush, this high. But basically, what it is to reward center of the brain that is being activated. And therefore, then there becomes that constant craving and desire to continue to feed that part of the brain. And that's where we get the addiction aspect. So now it all seems rather confusing, doesn't it? On one end, I'm talking about compulsive disorder. On the other end, we're talking about an addiction and the idea that, again, the reward center. And the reason it seems confusing is because, we're dealing with the complexity of the brain. And in this, there's nothing that's black and white. There's many, many shades of gray. And that's why, even when it comes to treating sexual addiction, you can't have a cookie cutter approach. I mean, we do have the basics that we put in place, but yet every man is different, or every woman is different who's dealing with some of this. So therefore, you may have some people who show signs of a compulsive control disorder, because what they're doing is they're reporting that they have these irresistible urges and compulsions that are both physical and mental, right? And therefore, it leads them to act out sexually without regard to the consequences. So once again, it's just not black and white for what we're talking about here. Um, you have some individuals who show signs of the addictive disorder. They continue to engage in the destructive behavior, again, also despite the consequences. But yet, again, different than the compulsive disorders that they're having, they're not reporting that they see irresistible urges and impulse. What they're just saying is just this natural desire to go and to act out. So again, it seems rather confusing, but because there's just different elements of it that we have to deal with. And again, the idea is that it's not black and white. So that explains when I say, no, we can't be cured. If you ask me, can we be free of this disorder? But now let's look at why I also say that we can be free of this disorder. We can be free when we learn to control our compulsiveness. And as you know, I believe it's the inner child who is the main driver to that compulsive drive that we have. He is highly reactive to circumstances in our life, and he doesn't have the capability to discern the situation and to make a healthy decision. And this is where we come in, okay? By being aware of the actions of our inner child, that action that kid takes, he or she takes, when they sense distress, that's when they step in. They sense there's some sort of distress or discomfort. By us being aware of that, then we no longer have to aimlessly, run off when the kid, has us trying to run to escape in compulsive behaviors. Instead, we learn to be aware of the inner child, what triggered the kid to become compulsive, and then we can become empowered. And we can then control our problematic sexual behaviors. Let's go back to me again. As I told you before, when I was in the height of that, it was like lots of sexual thought. I don't have ongoing sexual thought racing through my head, not an everyday basis. They are very, very quiet. And you know why? Because my inner child is quiet. And the reason my inner child is quiet, because I've worked enough with him that he knows that I'm capable of handling any type of situation that will bring distress or discomfort. So therefore, he doesn't keep me stimulated on a regular basis. I am now, pretty much kind of worry-free. It's not that I don't worry about anything, I do. But for the most part, I can put things in their proper perspective and not deal with a lot of anxiety in my life. And that's part of what's going on here with this. When we look at especially compulsive behavior, the underlying driver for much of that is anxiety. When we go and we look at the inner children that I designed, all of them, all of them are dealing with anxiety in one shape, form, or another. Because what's at the heart of each and every one of those kids is some sort of emotional distress. And therefore, we need to be able to teach the child, look, you do not have to be afraid. You don't have to be fearful because I am here. Why did the kid develop in the first place? He developed because there was no adult really around to help him or her to sit with emotional distress. So therefore, they had to figure it out on their own. And as you know, I've told you before, the only solution they could come up with is, I won't think about this. And then they would run off and engage in too much TV, too much food, too much fantasy in their own head. We take that same coping strategy and we move it into our adolescent world and into our teen world and ultimately into our adult world. And somewhere along the line, we come across sex and we find it to be the ultimate distraction for us. So anyway, coming back to all of this, so no, there is no cure for what we're doing, but yes, we can learn to manage it extremely effectively. And by doing that, we could wind up living a life where it does not trouble us, it does not haunt us, it does not cause chaos in our lives as we move forward. So anyway, Tammy, that's what I got for you today.
And I appreciate that. I was thinking when you were just talking about, the inner child and getting stuck in like using, food or watching TV or whatever. And some of the things that you did as a younger child, it is still like, I know how easy it is to fall into those. You mentioned the donuts. Of course, now I'm craving a donut. But like whatever it is, like, yes, those voices can quiet down. But, like I always can tell for myself too, if I've got more going on or if I haven't taken care of myself, I'm not, I haven't gotten enough sleep or whatever, if I'm stretched too thin, then those little voices, they may be mostly quiet, but they're going to be going, hey, 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 they're going to be more, more active, but switching to sexual behavior as an adult or whatever problematic behavior, I still think that all of those other like the food and the numbing out on TV or whatever it is, it's just finding all of these different ways to numb out and escape and cope with things that inner child is going, I don't know how to deal with this. I'm too little and I don't know what to do.
Right. And that's why if we don't take care of the child and learn how to make him feel comfortable, what we'll do is, if let's say we are able to control the sexual aspect of our addiction, it will fall into a different addiction very easily. And we see that happen time and time again. And that's why it's so important to, again, to go deeper, to understand, okay, what's at the root of the overall problem that we have anxiety about that lead to the compulsiveness that we're dealing with.
So you also talked about cookie cutter, and I know there are so many people that are going like, just tell me, I want to do this, this, and this, and then I want it to be all, all better. And so, it's a really good reminder that there isn't a cookie cutter approach, and people learn different styles and, need different things. And even sexual sobriety is different. Like with substance, it's really easy. It's complete abstinence.
Mm,
Yeah, but
right.
that isn't what, with food or with, sex or,
Hmm.
any behavioral things, it is how do we learn to live in the world, with integrity, and not use problematic behaviors to
Yeah.
cope.
We have to
Um,
approach it from a different mindset, a different set of values, perhaps at times, but more importantly, again, understanding what drove us to misuse those behaviors in the first place.
yes. And and it is interesting to understand, but I know lots of people who know, have some head knowledge of it, but haven't done the work to heal it. So they're still acting out. So they understand kind of the why, but they're still acting out,
Right.
so it really is complex, as you indicated, and those layers of help. I want to point out, because you're talking about the inner child, I want to get the dates right. So you have, and I'm going to put this in the chat, the inner child work group for men starts again. So it's 90 minutes once a week for 6 weeks. That will start again on the 26th of January. And then the Why Men Struggle to Love is also starting on the 23rd of January. So those are live facilitated. Dr. Eddie is leading both of those groups. I will put the information in our in the chat, but you'll find the information about those and other work groups to really work on, how do we learn about this? How do we do, he's got homework he's going to share. So it really is a valuable group for digging in and getting a foundation of, of healing on those levels. So on the Seeking Integrity site, you'll see those. So I hope you participate. We've got some questions, Dr. Eddie.
Okay.
Okay, first one. Hi, Dr. Eddie. I'm a recovering addict and I'm experiencing a lot of fear. If I start to feel better, my society, no, probably my society may suffer. My fear is surrounding losing my wife. If I relapse, that is a possibility that I'm going to. So he's doing the Porn 101 work group
Okay.
now. That's
And
great.
he's fearful
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
they lose his wife if he relapses.
Hmm.
With that, yeah, it's a valid fear. And I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, don't be afraid. Okay. I mean, yes. But again, what do? We hold on to that fear and we continue to move forward, seeking to do the right thing. And that's where your mindset has to be every day. You wake up in the morning and you start to approach the day with, okay, what's the mission? My mission is sobriety. Just today, just today. Take one day at a time. And what am I going to do? And so you kind of set the game plan. And what am I going to do if I find those urges or desires are a little bit stronger than I want them to be? Well, maybe I'm going to pick up a phone and I'm going to call somebody. Okay, maybe that's what I'm going to do. Or maybe I'm going to go dive into one of my workbooks. Do that. Maybe I'll go find an online meeting. But what are you going to do to maintain your sobriety? And that is what you can't wait till you get in the trenches and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, what do I do now? You have to plan ahead. So again, I understand your fear is very valid, but what do you want to do? How do you ultimately overcome the fear? You don't relapse. So make sure you're doing your work, make sure you're putting in all the effort that you can, and make sure you're prepared every single day along the way.
And you're exactly right. Yeah, I share often, failure to plan is planning to fail, and it really is setting the intention and setting it first thing in the morning. And you can, one of the things I love about 12 step is it's 24 hours. I have to do this. I don't even have to. I choose to do this for 24 hours. But you know what? I can break that up to. I just have to, the next 5 minutes. All I have to do is get through the next 5 minutes, and I get through that. then I'll do the next 5 minutes. So breaking it into manageable pieces, but yes, having a plan. I love that you talked about connecting with others, reaching out to someone else, or, joining a 12-step group, because the fastest way to silence those inner children is to reach out to other people who can help us look at it from an adult perspective.
Yeah, right.
Okay, next question. How do I know if I'm feeling genuine, healthy arousal and want to be close with my wife without the compulsiveness? I feel at times I want to be close with my wife, but I confuse and worry that she will get triggered and I will be rejected by her. I have been in recovery for over 2 years and I'm working with self along with inner childs.
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, it's like, okay, the desire to be close to my wife should first and foremost be from an emotional intimacy standpoint. That's where it should be. Because if your thought is always about, ooh, I definitely want to have sex with my wife, then again, I think you're giving into, again, the primal instinct that we may have. If you, and again, so what you have is the fear, I'm going to be rejected. So how do you get through the fear? The fear is, again, I hold on to it, but my desire is I'm going to approach her, to be close to her, but in order to emotionally connect. If it goes somewhere from there, great. If it doesn't, hopefully you walk away from that experience feeling just as satisfied as if you would have been physically involved with one another, because emotional intimacy is stronger than physical intimacy. And I know for many men that's very hard to understand, but those who have done the work and come to and seen what it can do, they will tell you that that is the truth. That being closer to someone from an emotional perspective is so much more powerful than from a physical. So that's the way I'd be approaching her. I'd be approaching her, if I ever have it, if you have that desire to be close to her, move there, hold on to the fear, but do it in seeking one objective, and that is we are going to be emotionally close, and then let her make the determination of whether or not it goes further. And if she does, fine. If she doesn't, be happy and satisfied with what you've done, because you've done the right thing. And that is working on your overall addiction, because you're focused on the things that are most important.
Yeah, I was thinking, and it is really challenging to, part of it is we have to live an examined life. So checking our motives, like that is a real and valid thing. But I love that you're going, set that aside and really look at it as I want to connect in a real and meaningful way with my spouse. That's, that changes the focus.
Yes.
Okay, next question. As a wife of a sex addict, I would like him to go to a CSAT meeting, listen to podcasts about addiction, betrayal, trauma, have a sponsor do stuff. Would really like him to do recovery work, have good self-care, learn empathy, check in regularly. But he feels that it is not what he needs to do. Can this be possible to get it in recovery with just seeing a CSAT and a few meetings a week?
Well, I mean, it is better than nothing. I mean, if he's seeing a CSAT and attending a few meetings a week, I mean, better than not doing anything at all. But again, the bigger problem you have here is that he feels that, this isn't what he needs. You know what? When we're in this stage of recovery, we have no idea what the hell we need. Because we don't know what we need. Because if we knew what we needed, we would have gotten that help before, and we would have not gotten in the mess that we're in. So therefore, that's why we have to rely on the voices of the people who have been through this, the people who work in this field, to tell us what they believe is best for us in our recovery. So again, it seems that he's a little bit strong-headed, but it also seems like you're working a lot harder than he is on his recovery. And as you said, you're going down the list of all the things that he's supposed to be doing. Which again, I understand why you're doing it, because you're worried and you're fearful that he's going to relapse and he's going to be back to where he was. But that's not supposed to be your role. That's not your job. You have your own recovery to do. And therefore, if he is just seeing a CSAT, then that's the person who should be putting together the recovery plan that is right for him. And so that would be my answer to you.
So yeah, I'm gonna ditto. What are the healthy boundaries that you need? And it's okay to say, I am concerned, and when I do, my fear comes up when I don't see you as actively engaged in recovery as I'm hoping. So therefore, I'm going to, take care of me, and my healthy boundary for me is because I value myself. One of the things, and I just heard this week again, and I had forgotten this, but I had a couple of people, so it was different sources. So, but they talked about with 12 step, particularly in the S group, there are some meetings where nobody's real, like they're just kind of on a cycle of addiction, and they're kind of all validating, well, yeah, that's okay. So if he's going to meetings where they're actually working the steps, where there's genuine recovery, that would be a helpful thing. If he's in one of the groups that is just kind of cycling and everybody's, nobody's really in recovery. I won't even say they're relapsing. They're acting out every few months, and they're spending time in a meeting. That would be problematic for me. But as we all say, you have no control over him. You can have healthy boundaries for your safety, your emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual safety. Those are your boundaries because you value you. What he does or doesn't do can impact you, or actually impact the relationship, because you may be more distant, you may be leaning more into these resources and healthy connections. But and I said this the other day to somebody too, but I feel sad when an addict is, in the 12 step, it talks about half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. So it really is, you get out of it what you put into it. If you want to be on a different path, if addicts could see, we know if addicts could see how good life is if you commit, everybody would be, I'm all in, but they're hanging on to these shards of maladaptive coping mechanisms that those inner children are telling them make sense.
It's because it's all they know.
Yeah, I know.
It's all they know.
It's a leap of faith. I get it.
It is. These are the coping skills I have. These coping skills have served me well. Not really, but they think it has.
Yeah.
Served me well growing up in my day. And that's what they continue to lean on. And they need to be convinced, and you're not the person to convince them, but they need to learn to be convinced to what Tammy said. No, there is a different life out there for you, a much better life, a better pathway than the one that you're on now. And sometimes, again, you've heard it, it takes hitting rock bottom where they've lost everything for them to get that message. And in some cases, they still don't get that message.
That's true.
They never get it. And that it does happen. The severity of the complexity of that compulsive disorder, the complexity of what the issues are within the brain itself, there are some people who are never going to get better. It's sad. It's a sad fact. Could they get better? Yes, they could. It would take a lot of work, a lot of effort. And at times, people just don't want to put in the time and the effort or the energy. They just want to lean back on those coping strategies that they know and that they feel comfortable with, and they move forward. Remember, some people, when they're in a negative, if they've grown up in negative, with a lot of negative effect, and therefore that's what they've been surrounded by, being in a negative comfort zone is is okay for them because it's what I know and what I do feel comfortable with, even though it is negative, even though there's nothing good about it. I'm okay here.
I saved there was a little quote that came across, probably at least a year ago, but it was a bicycle in the muck, and it says some people are stuck because they choose to be, and
Right.
that is unfortunately the case. That does not mean that you have to be stuck. I put a link for the work groups, for Dr. Eddie's, but there's Sex Addiction 101. He is a perfect candidate for that. The Betrayed Partner work group starts again March 1st. So those are psychoeducation. They are not therapy. They are not treatment. Many therapists recommend those in conjunction with the work you are doing with them. So this would not replace, the CSAT, but it would really shore things up. It's a really good foundation. So there's a bunch of different options. Please consider those.
Okay.
Okay. Next one. I have a narcissist father. I have always craved his attention, which he took away from me when I hit puberty. Fantasies to be loved by him turned to sexual fantasy about him. So disgusted afterwards. What is that?
There's a father wound. That's a
Yeah.
complete father wound. And somewhere along the line, your wires got crossed where you started to relate sexual activity with receiving dad's acceptance. And that's where the fantasies come in of that. And for you, what you need to be doing is sitting with a therapist to be able to properly grieve, what you did not get from dad, the wound that he caused you. Also, what you need to be doing is surrounding yourself with some really good men, safe men who will show you what is it like to be able to be accepted and loved by another man, but that doesn't lead to any sort of sexual contact or thought. So those are the two main things that I think you need to do. One, do the therapy to deal with the father wound, and also make sure you're surrounded by very healthy men who could show you this is what a healthy relationship is like.
Yeah. And I feel for you. That's a real and deep wound.
It
And
is. It's
so,
sad.
yeah.
It's
And
not. Let me say that this is not that uncommon.
yeah.
It is not that uncommon, and it also goes the other way too.
Yes.
For men who have had the mother wound, where they could have sexual fantasies about their mom. So, and also women go through this too. So again, it is your brain trying to come to some sort of a logical assumption of how can I get daddy's attention. Okay. And it takes you down a pathway that you don't want to be. And so therefore, again, go speak with someone, do the work. You're gonna take time to do that father wound work, but it will be so beneficial to you in the long run.
Okay. Next question. How do I know if my coping strategies are in the realm of healthy or unhealthy? I don't feel like I have addictive tendencies, but enjoy vegging out to a show, social media, or having a drink or cocktail or two.
Yeah, okay. So the bottom line here is because we all have coping strategies, which are fine. Moderation. It's all about moderation. Now, if you're gonna veg out 12 hours a day, if you're gonna sit on the couch every night, if you're gonna drink and have a cocktail, but you're gonna have instead of one or maybe two, you're gonna have four or five every night, that's when it becomes a problem. So everything in moderation is the answer to what you're talking about right here. Because like I said, we all have coping strategies. I have my own coping strategy also, but I have to do them all in moderation.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I needed a breather on Sunday, so I watched one episode of one of my little series, and you know, and and I indulged in that. I let myself completely indulge in that. I think part of it too is do I feel compulsive about it? Or also, am I missing out on other things? Am I
Mm.
not doing or connecting with other people? So yeah, we all need mental health breaks and stuff like that. But if I'm missing out, or if I'm not taking care of things that I should be taking care of, that will, that would be a problem for me too.
Yeah, right, absolutely. But again, that's also balance, right? So
Yes.
therefore, if I neglect my work because I want to go and watch a show, and then it's like, okay, streaming. So now they just put 10 episodes on. So I'm not going to watch one, I'm going to watch 3 or 4. Then I'm going to have a problem, all right, with it. But to watch one, maybe 2 episodes, great. Yeah, there's the excitement and the adrenaline of what's next. But you know what? Save it for tomorrow or the next day, and then come back and do another one. And again, that's how I control compulsive. Because let's face it, we've all done it before. I've done it where I sat there and binge through 6, 7, 8, and after I'm done, I'm like, oh, this sucks. And now I will not do that. The most I'll ever watch is 2. And my wife and I will watch a show and we'll watch 1 episode, and then she'll be like, what do you want to do? Well, I watch another one. You don't want to watch? And I'm like, well, you know what? I do have something I have to take care of. Or no, yeah, let's do one more. Again, balance in life, moderation.
Yeah. Yeah. And balance is one of those hard, like I tend to overwork. And so like I have to have the balance of like doing self-care too. So it is challenging. It's a lifelong journey.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. As a betrayed partner, I hate myself more for not feeling appalled by my husband's behavior more than I hate him. I'm worried something is wrong with me.
You're not appalled by your husband's behavior, so therefore you're apathetic. Um, yeah, so therefore, kind of wonder what happened in the relationship. And would you guys rather have you guys been drifting apart? And again, I'm just surmising here because I don't have the detail. But have you guys been drifting apart over the years that, you know what, there's really no passion right now? There's no real passion. There's no real connection. These are the people who are walking along parallel paths. And so therefore it's, personally, I don't care what you did. Or you know what? It doesn't bother me because you can't hurt me because I disconnected from you. That's what it sounds like to me. And again, like
Well,
I said,
I'm
I don't
hang
have
on one
enough.
second,
Go
because
ahead.
it says, because I'm trying to figure this out, but it says I'm appalled that I hate myself more for not feeling appalled by my husband's behavior more than I hate him. So it
Okay.
almost sounds like she hates him and but isn't appalled by the behavior. But am I reading that incorrectly?
That's a complete disconnect to me. Because then the question becomes, why are you hating him? If
Probably
you're
for
not
the
appalled,
terrible behavior and how he's,
you would think so,
the hurt. Yeah.
but she's saying I'm not appalled by the behavior. So then if you hate him, it can't be because of that. So does that mean the hate was there beforehand? That's why I still think there was a
Okay.
disconnection between them. So again, we would just need more information. We could sit here and
So yeah,
try to figure
yeah.
this out all
So
day.
one of the things with partners, nothing you did or didn't do caused him to act out, right?
Yes.
Or him or her to act out. So self-loathing about something that is extraneous, that is his behaviors. And here's one aspect to consider. Dr. Eddie was talking early about his behaviors, and I have the same patterns too. But there was brokenness in us that caused us to choose a path that was a maladaptive coping mechanism. So on some level, hating and that passion, whatever you need to do, but in his brokenness, he did some horrible, terrible things, that have been hurtful to you and hurtful to him. So your emotions, I hate that you're directing your
Mhm.
negative emotion at yourself. I mean, accepting that it sucks, what he's done. But it had nothing to do with you. It is absolutely, in his brokenness. So,
Mhm.
okay, next question. My husband is seeing a CSAT, has a sponsor, goes to several online meetings a week, and does SA in person 1 to 2 times a week. My most recent discovery was in October of 22, but he has been acting out since before we were married. I now feel I don't believe he can overcome this compulsion and addiction. I have separated him for over 2 months. I don't know if I can ever trust him. I'm afraid he is going through these actions to get me back and not actually helping himself. Will I ever trust him again?
Well, again, October of 2022 was only 3 months ago.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, I could understand why you would have the doubt that he can overcome, his issues and what's happening here. Um, the fact that he's doing the work is that's positive. How much does it ultimately help him depends on how much does he absorb and how much self-reflection he does. Now, I can go to all the meetings I want. I could sit with my counselor every week. I could have a sponsor. Okay, I could watch podcasts. I could do all of that. But if I don't start to look at what I'm being fed and try to make the determination of, okay, so how does this all relate to me and what I've been through in my life? What are the pieces? Because he's putting together a puzzle. You need to be putting together a puzzle that gives them the answer to why is my life like this? And therefore, then I can get to the solution. But some guys, again, they just go in there and soak all this stuff up, or not even soak it up. They take it in, but they don't put together the pieces to the puzzle. So your bottom line, your question was, will I ever be able to trust him again? You will not be able to trust him again until he can demonstrate for a long period of time that he is safe and that he is no longer acting out. That is the only way that you will be able to do that. Again, I don't think you're off running anywhere right now. You're separated. Let him continue to do the work, but tell him that, you know what, you're going to have to see a long period of sobriety on his part. But more importantly, I'd be challenging him and asking him the question to tell me, what are you learning about yourself? What are you learning about your addiction? What are you learning about how your childhood and all played into this? What are you learning about the fact of what you need moving forward that's going to keep you on the path of sobriety? That's what I'd be really pushing with them. Not so much, did you go to this meeting, do this? No, I want to know, what are you learning about you? And every week, he should be learning something new about himself.
And I typed in, you're right. These are lifelong issues. And to get a really solid foundation of recovery, we have a treatment program. He is a candidate for that. If you want to make shifts, we hear consistently, from the alumni that it was life changing. I care more when I hear that from partners and spouses, that they see he's shifted and that, that is meaningful. And even if you trust him at some point, you will never completely trust him again in the naive way that you did when you said, I do, and we're going to be partners, because that he can hurt you. But I hear consistently that eyes wide open, we are rebuilding, a path. We have a deeper level of connection and honesty. And so it can be far more meaningful than what you had, pre-discoveries, if he's willing to do the work. So.
Right.
Okay, next one. What is your advice if your husband's therapist seems to have fallen into feeling bad for your husband and is not helping him deal with my anger, even if my anger seems not rational, triggers are not rational? Every time anything is said in anger because of my triggers, shouldn't he be helping him learn to deal with his feelings of rejection and send him to victim mode? Why do some therapists become like besties with their clients instead of making their husband grow emotionally?
Okay, so you're not going to like part of my answer, because I see this situation quite often. Okay, as you said, even if my anger seems not rational, because triggers are not rational, I think that those who've been betrayed need to be working on becoming more rational. I think you need to work on how do I take my amygdala and slow it down, because you know what, I've seen it time and time again, and I'm not beating you up, please, okay? Again, because I don't know your situation. I'm going off on another track right now, but I see the women with a sledgehammer, and they are just pounding away. And no matter what he does, and even if he's doing all his work, even if he making these great drives, they are just pounding away. And what they're doing, they're emasculating, they're belittling, they are bloodying. None of that helps. And in fact, I have couples right now um, where the wife is doing that for quite some time. And in the last several months, she had a wake-up call. And that doesn't mean she's still not hurting. She is hurting. That doesn't mean she doesn't get triggered. She does get triggered. But her approach to him is just so amazing. So therefore, what she does, instead of beating him up about what he did or didn't do, what she does is she tells him what she feels.
Mm.
I'm very disappointed that you didn't call me before you left for work today. You know, it made me very frightened. And she walks away. And that brings him to his knees. And more importantly, what's happened to her now is you've seen her, she's made these inroads where she feels so much better about herself. And why? Because she's not sitting there with this sledgehammer beating all day long. Instead, what she's talking about is her pain in a very rational way. And now you know what she feels? She feels like she's back in control. She feels like she's back in control. So that I took you down that path for a moment. Okay, let me come back here. Yes, there are some counselors who, when you're sitting there and you're listening to the husband tell his lowest me story, I can't believe she did this to me. Um, and what I talk about in those circumstances is, you know what? You got to see the pain. You have to see the pain. Now, what I also tell them is when it starts to get too intense, if that sledgehammer comes out and she, again, emasculating, belittling, you walk away. You do not ask for timeout. You say, I'm taking a timeout. You tell her also, I'm going to come back, but hopefully when I come back, we will be more rational and we will be able to carry on this conversation. If not, then we'll continue it tomorrow. So that's the guidance that I give them. But for in some cases, counselors, you know what, we're human. So therefore, we hear those stories about, a guy being just beaten to death, but also we hear it on the other side too, with the woman who feels like, you know what, he's never going to get better, and our hearts go out to them at times. So we have to sometimes take a step back and to make sure we're not getting too close to that. And sometimes counselors get caught up and they don't take that step back. So again, I would ask you, and again, I'm not minimizing your pain, but I would look at it for a different way to learn to deal with him, which would again ultimately make you feel better. And that is the idea of tell him what you feel, tell him how you feel, and then just walk away. And that is stronger than any sledgehammer you could ever bring out.
Yeah, I was thinking, what I hear is this isn't working well for either of you. Like it's,
Oh,
your age and now he's so like you've got something that isn't meeting your need, which is what I think you're trying to convey to him, in the anger. So, I love that one of the techniques is Karpman drama triangle. You can look it up. There's a video, or email me. I can send you one. But it, I said it's like the negative two-step, dance, because it's like, this is the pattern we keep doing, and you can keep doing that forever and not make any progress, or you can go, this is not serving me. It's not serving the other person. Is there a different way we can do it? But
Yes.
yeah, but coming up, like you talked about earlier too, Dr. Eddie, with like not in the moment, like talking about this when you're not in one of those situations,
Right.
and saying, this is what we're going to do, so everybody understands the plan. I'm going to walk away, whatever. I'm going to journal about my anger before I bring it to you, so I have processed through it. And
I've seen people doing this dance that you're talking about right here for 25 plus years. It's like, why the hell are you even married?
yeah,
I mean, think about it. This is what it is. I mean, he's not doing anything anymore to make her feel sick, because he's just trying to protect himself. He also feels emasculated. And what there's nothing but hatred that's really going on. There's all this resentment that is built. And yes, understand, he created the mess. But there are times that, that scorned woman can, if she's not doing her work, can take that situation and make it worse. And I know you ladies don't like to hear this. I've said it before. I'm sorry, this is what I see. And I'm telling you, a lot of my colleagues in conversations that I've been having with them, they're seeing it too. They're seeing it also. And they're like, you know what? We need to make sure that both are healing versus ripping each other down. And I am trying to do the best I can to get my men to be very patient, to be very full of grace, to see the pain. And in fact, I'm hoping to have an amazing show next month. I'm not sure, I'm not going to talk about it yet, but it'll be all about this. I'm just waiting for, some information, but it'll be about this, that will show how we can heal together as opposed to just continuing to tear each other apart.
Ultimately, I would hope that both people want that for the goal, for healing,
I think they
So,
lose sight of it,
yeah,
Tammy. I think they lose sight of that, of the
Mm.
goal. I think they get so caught up in their anger and so caught up in all their bitterness,
and hurt. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And they're hurt, that they forget what the goal is. If that is to restore the relationship. Restore,
yeah.
it doesn't exist. That's not what they're focused on.
Okay. Next question. Learning to understand, manage my inner child has been crucial in my success, to my success and recovery. I would still be acting out if I never discovered why I felt the way all my life, like I had a hole in me that needed to be filled. It also helped me establish boundaries for the first time in my life. Very important to learn what drove my behaviors acting out for my entire life. 28 months in recovery, yay, 16 months sober, and rebuilding a new amazing relationship with my wife. Thank you, Eddie. Oh, that is lovely. Thank you.
You are welcome, Steve. You're doing great work.
Next question. My PA husband isn't in great recovery. He's seeing a CSAT once a week, but goes to no meetings or groups and doesn't speak to anyone else and is very resistant to doing anything else. He gets angry and defensive, saying, I don't acknowledge all the things he is doing and everything he does for me and our kids. Very clearly not in recovery. Just had a slip 2 weeks ago and only disclosed 2 days ago. She sees an APSATS therapist once a week now. And leaving or separating is not an option for me right now. Let's see, I gotta go find. Continuation. What does it look like for me to be okay while he is still in my life? This is at 5 after the hour. Does it work? Do I just work my recovery, do the things that make me happy and remain cordial to him, ignore him, be kind and supportive to him when I can be? And if it's not a contradiction to my safety and healing and distant with him, when I need to focus on keeping myself safe. what does this look like? We go through a huge ups and downs when we're okay and just acting like everything is normal, and then times of silence and distance
Right.
help.
But
How
you,
confusing.
yeah, it is. But you're right. I think obviously you've listened to me before, what I said here. What you need to do, you can't change him. You can't force him to do anything. He knows what he's supposed to be doing. He not doesn't want to do it for whatever reason. So what you do is you continue to focus on your recovery. You continue to do all the things that will make you happy. Yes, you do remain cordial to him. You pray for him and for his recovery. We don't want to ignore him. Okay. But again, you need to perhaps maybe put up your boundary for when he does act out. Like, for example, you're out of the bedroom for a period of time, whatever it may be. But you need to be focused on you right now because it's obvious that he is not going to put in the effort and the energy that's required to make you feel safe. So he's saying something very loud and clear. I also would try to get him in front of your therapist to to communicate if you guys haven't already, but to have her communicate to him, hey, let me tell you what you're doing to her. Let me tell you by not doing what needs to be done. He's a lone wolf. That's basically what he is. He's a lone wolf. He's trying to do it himself. And he's failing because you said he's failing. So therefore, the lone wolf will always fail. Therefore, I get him in front of your therapist, say, look, I want you to come to her because I want you to know what I'm going through. And maybe that might be something that jumpstarts him.
Well, and you can, and Dr. Rob talks about this all the time too. You can go to his therapist too and say, so
Yeah,
whichever
true.
way, but getting his therapist involved in this too. But I think it's challenging, but it really is. What is your integrity? And you've got kiddos in the house, so managing this, not pretending like everything is all okay, but navigating that space is very difficult. But you being the mom that you want to be and modeling that for your kiddos
Mm.
is important too. So,
I want to go to
okay,
this question real fast, Tammy, because we're pretty much out of time,
I'm gonna
and I
I'm
can
gonna
answer it fast.
print them too. So
Good,
yeah,
because
go
we'll
ahead.
do that at the beginning of our next.
Yes.
Can a recovering sex addict watch movies with sexual content, partial nudity, sex scenes without getting triggered? The answer is yes. They can watch something without being triggered, but they probably shouldn't be doing it. Okay, because again, you're just playing on the edge over here. So therefore, I'm looking at this, and okay, I'm not really triggered by it, but perhaps maybe the next day the scene comes back in my head, the image comes back in my head, and then I may get somewhat triggered by it. So therefore, again, we don't want to, there's certain things we should be staying away from. There's certain movies we should be staying away from, certain shows we need to stay away with. Now, I told you I watched Game of Thrones, but what I did was I didn't watch it on Sunday. I watched it during the week, and I had my remote, and I just sat there. Whoop, here we go, fast forward, because I love the story. I just love the drama of all of it. But so therefore, again, there are certain scenes you could just fast forward through them. So like I said, that doesn't mean you have to be triggered by it, but it may not match his arousal template. So therefore, you may not get aroused by what's on the screen. However, it's still something we shouldn't be engaging in.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit ago about checking our motives. What is our motive for watching whatever it is we're doing, or whatever it is we're doing? And if um, one of my problems, is alcohol. So there are times when going to a restaurant is fine. And there are times when particularly if it's more of a bar like thing, I have asked my husband, please don't order, whatever, because I just don't need to, I don't need the mental energy about that. He's not an alcoholic. So it's one of those, I check my motives on lots of different things. What am I expecting from whatever? If you're watching something thinking it's going to be tittillating, that's a problem. And would be a good indicator that this isn't a good choice, for me right now. And I think the more headspace that you take to justify why you should do this, that's also something,
right. Definitely. There's no doubt about it. But anyway, folks, we are out of time.
Yes, and I'm going to take
Consider-
pictures of all the chat,
Right.
and I'm going to capture them or the questions, and I'm going to capture them for next week or next month, sorry, and make sure that we've got them.
If you haven't been part of the Inner Child Going Deeper workshop, please check it out. If you are interested in, again, going beyond sobriety, check out the Why Men Struggle to Love workshop. We do have some openings available, but they start next week. So
yes, on seekingintegrity.com. You can always email us, email me, and I'll give you the links and things too. But seekingintegrity.com, you'll see the work groups and you can sign up directly there. So thank you as always, Dr.
You're
Eddie. I look
welcome,
forward to
Tammy.
next month. You've given us a teaser. So
Right.
right.
Goodbye, folks.
Bye-bye.